Hi, good evening, and thank you if you've joined this webinar tonight, where we're going to be talking about a potential new walking and cycling project from the New River at Tenniswood Road through to Brick Lane. We're going to get going because it's 1 minute past 6, so we'll start straight away, and we'll go to the next slide, please. So here's the agenda for this evening. We'll do some part of a welcome and some general housekeeping, and then we'll give you a short introduction to the Journeys in Place programme. I'll then pass to colleagues, my colleague Anna, who's going to talk through the overview of the route, and then another colleague, Liz, who's going to talk about communications and engagement. And then we'll cover next steps, and then we'll have a short question and answer session. Okay, next slide, please. Just while we wait for the next slide, it's not come up for me. Just thought I'd introduce myself. I should start with that. So my name's Richard Eason, and I'm the Journeys and Places Programme Director. And this project, along with a number of others, falls into my programme of works. Colleagues will introduce themselves as we go through the webinar as they present. Okay, so hopefully the housekeeping now should be up on the slide. So I'll just talk through some of these points. So we've got a Q&A function as part of the webinar. You should be able to see that, and we'll be picking up questions not as we go along, but at the end of the presentation. But as questions occur to you, please do enter them into that Q&A function, and that just enables us to start looking through those as the presentation's ongoing. If you've got questions, or you've got observations or points that you'd like to share, then all of those are welcome. But I just ask if you did add those in separately. So if you've got just a comment that you'd like to make or an observation that you'd like to make that as one submission. If you've got several questions that you'd like to ask, it's helpful if you can just ask those as individual questions. So write one in, press send, and then write your others in and press send. And it just helps us filter through those as we're trying to respond to those in the Q&A session. On the project page, and you can see the project page on the link down there, that there is some FAQs, and we'll be looking to add to that after the seminar, after the webinar as well. And yeah, just to note that we won't be publishing your questions or your comments. So feel free to add whatever you like. You'll be posting those anonymously, and then we'll pick out the questions. We'll take away the comments and review those later. This webinar is going to get published onto the project page. Again, it will only be the team who has seen in the video, so don't worry about that. We'll talk, I think, a little bit about the map that we've got online later, and we welcome comments to keep getting added to that. I think that's open until Sunday the 8th, this Sunday, I think, 8th of Feb. Okay, so hopefully that's all clear, and now we'll move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, I think that it may just be me. There's a slight lag, I think, on the slides. So I think the next slide is talking about the program. Let's see if that's going to come through. So the Journeys and Places program. So that name might be new to some of you. So we were previously called the Healthy Streets team. But we're now called the Journeys and Places team. That's really a evolution of the program. We originally started off some time back as called the Cycle Enfield team, and then we migrated to the Healthy Streets team, and now we're Journeys and Places. Really, just demonstrating, I think, how the program has evolved over time. Healthy Streets approach is very much still incorporated into the way that we do things. The Healthy Streets approach is more of a policy term used across London and indeed broader than that. Journeys and Places is the local Enfield program that we've evolved through the work so far. And these really on the screen here are some of the reasons why we are delivering this program. So I think many of us now accept that we are in a climate emergency, and so actually trying to address and deal with our carbon emissions is something that's important for us all. And that aside, air quality is something that is affecting all of our health, and so we want to work together to try to improve that, as well as improving our own physical health through our own daily physical activity. We've got some challenges with child obesity, for example, in the borough, and integrating more active travel into our everyday lives is something that we want to try and enable for everybody. Transport is, there's a social aspect to transport. There's a big percentage of people, over a third of people in the borough, who don't even own a car. So just developing a system of getting around that's purely dependent on cars is, I think is a challenge. And what we want to do is move towards a place where more people are able to walk and cycle as part of their everyday journeys. Other issues to consider are ones of road safety. And so as part of the work that we're doing, we want to make sure that we're reducing the amount of accidents and things on our roads. And as I said before, just really giving people an alternative to the private car. So we want walking, cycling and public transport to become the natural choice. We're already seeing, very high levels of motor miles travelled on our roads, and that's something that we need to reduce over time. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. I think we've just altered our updated the slide presentation, so hopefully that should work a bit smoother. It appears to be doing so, so thank you for that, and apologies if there's been any disruption. So about a little bit more about the program then. So we've really divided the program into a series of different types of projects. One of them is about developing a walking and cycling network, and that's the project that we're here to hear about tonight. Very much falls into that category. Over the last few years, we've been developing a network of walking and cycling routes. And I think it's important that we continue to build the density of that network so that more people are within easy access of quality cycle routes. And there'll be a mix of different types of routes. So some of those might be segregated facilities that we have on some of our primary roads, but complemented by a network of different types of routes using quieter roads and other, through parks, for example, so that collectively all of those routes joined together to create this sort of coherent network. And this picture here is showing an example of some work that we've delivered previously. Okay, next slide, please. So town centres and public realm is also one of the themes of our work. A key project that we're working on at the moment is Enfield Town, and how we can improve the experience for all users of the town centre, very much to focus on pedestrian priority. So that's another strand of our work. And then the next slide covers off our neighbourhoods aspects of work. So there's a few different activities that fall into these. We've delivered, as you may know, a number of projects recently where we've looked to reduce the speed and volume of private cars through residential areas. Also, our school streets program of projects also falls within our neighbourhoods work, and we've been rolling a number of those out across the borough, where we effectively close the roads at school start and school end of the school day to make sure we're creating a safe environment for our young people. Also installing things like residential cycle hangers, for example, across neighbourhood areas also forms part of this work. And then the final area of work is really about the work that we're doing with the community. So if we go to the next slide, and the activities that we're doing to inform and inspire about active travel. So there's a number of different projects that form part of this this area of work, including things like our Doctor Bike provision, and also our inclusive cycling scheme at Bushell Park. Just being a couple of examples of some of the things that we're doing to help engage more people in the idea of traveling more actively. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of what the Journeys and Places programme is about and why we're doing what we're doing. And I'll now hand across to Anna, who's going to tell you a little bit more about this particular project.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ana Francisco, the project manager delivering this project, New River at Tenniswood Road to Brick Lane walking cycling route. I'm very excited to be delivering this new piece of infrastructure that will have significant benefits to the community by providing you more options to travel, to work, shops, schools, and parks. The project will deliver a key active travel link that will contribute towards a long-term increase in the levels of active travel by expanding the borough-wide network. This route will aim to create an environment that's safe, accessible, and removes any barriers for people walking, wheeling, and cycling. This proposed route is part of this work, and we are currently in an early engagement phase of this project, which has been funding by TfL. This webinar is part of this early engagement stage, in which we are inviting feedback from residents to help influence any future design. If we are finally successful in receiving more funding to proceed to the detailed design, there will be more engagement, including a statutory consultation. This route will connect schools such as Bishop's Stopford Schools and Suffolk's Primary School, existing cycle infrastructures, and the future infill town to Broxbourne walking and cycling route that will be running alongside the New River. There's also possible improvements to road crossings to enable people walk and cycle more safely, greening and walk improvements along Brick Lane, and light improvements around the car parking near to the Elizabeth Stadium. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this proposed New River route forms part of the Infill Journeys and Places program. The proposed route begins on Hertford Road at the junction of Brick Lane, then proceeds along Brick Lane and the section of Oldbury before entering a shared footpath onto the A10 Great Grambridge Road, which crosses to reach Cambridge Gardens. It then follows Cambridge Gardens and Donkey Lane, passing through Enfield Playing Fields Car Park and a shared walkway before heading north along Leigh-Smith Road and up to the Tenniswood Bridge share path. So the total length of the project route is approximately 1.64 kilometers. And as you can see from the map, some possible design features may include well, we are exploring the possibility of a new school at Brick Lane that will include Bishop Stopford School and Suffolk's Primary School. Some cross improvements at Great Cambridge Gardens, and a potential quiet way route. For those who doesn't know, cycle quiet way route is where cyclists are mixed with motorized traffic, and no segregated infrastructure is needed. And we include cycle logos and signs denoting the route. We've been reviewing the traffic data all along the route, which reveals that's unlikely that any segregated infrastructure will be required, and that's including Brick Lane. So following the engagement exercise, we'll collect all the ideas and issues that we've been receiving and use to help to continue with the design process. Can you go to the next slide, please? So regarding equality impacts assessment will be undertaken, which considers how the proposed project will have a positive or negative impact on each of these characteristics, and mitigating actions are then considered for any negative impacts. One example is the consideration of width footways to ensure that all accessible to all users. Next slide, please. We'll seek to provide rain gardens, which are planned landscape features that storm water runoff drains to along Brick Lane. An example of rain garden show on the top right-hand corner of the presentation. The rain garden collects storm water, which then filters contaminants and reduces flooding. The rain gardens will be planted with a mix of grasses and wildflowers and are attractive to pollinators at night for insects. Next slide, please. So there are indicators along the route of any some antisocial behavior, which I'm sure it's a concern to some of you. And we will analyze some lighting proposals along the route that will help to reduce the levels of crime along with the increased cycling and walking along the route, providing passive surveillance. The design will be discussed with the designing out crime officer and Metropolitan Police. I will now pass over to Liz from our communications teams. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Liz Rhodes. I am the Communications and Engagement Lead for the Journeys and Places program. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about what activities we are planning for this project and what's been done already. So many of you may have received the letter through your door a couple of weeks ago, inviting you to take part in providing your ideas, suggestions and comments for the proposed route online. So we have a project page that's live at the link on your screens there, and that sits on our Let's Talk Enfield engagement website. On that page is information on the project, including the proposed route, key documents, key dates, some frequently asked questions, but also this interactive map where you can place a pin at particular points along the route or nearby and share an idea or an issue or general comment about walking and cycling in the area. So that might be something that you want us to know that the route may impact or you have a concern about, but it also could be an idea for cycle parking or greenery planting and other things like that. So that map is open until next Sunday, the 8th of February. As I mentioned, we did send out a letter to residents and businesses in the area about that opportunity, as well as this webinar. We have been posting on the Journeys and Places social media accounts, Facebook and Twitter, as well as on the council Facebook and Twitter pages. And obviously we're holding this webinar tonight. We are also conducting some stakeholder engagement with partners, including Transport for London, as well as emergency services, and that will continue throughout the life of the project. And on the project page, you can find various updates throughout the life of the project and including other future opportunities to engage in this particular project and see further revised designs once we have those to share. So they'll be posted on that project page. And as we progress to, and if we progress to a statutory consultation on the draft traffic order, that will be delivered through that page. But information will be sent out to residents as and when that occurs as well. Next slide, please. So this is an image of the interactive map I just mentioned, and you can see here there are already some people who have placed pins along the route, sharing ideas and issues and comments. So please get involved and share your thoughts with us in that way. Thanks. Next slide. So this slide details a little bit more about the project page that I've just mentioned. It really is a hub of information where you can go to find the latest information and updates on the project, and we'll continue to use that as we progress through to further design and delivery of this project. Thank you. Next slide. I'm handing back to Anna, who's going to talk about the key next steps.
Thanks, Liz. So the key next steps are outlined as following the slides, but some are subject to funding discussions with funding provider and further approvals. If funding is provided, then we would proceed to develop detailed designs, and if also approval is provided, we would commence construction by the end of this year or early next year. And next slide, and we can hand over to Reed.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Okay, that takes us to the Q&A session. So let me just have a look through. We've had a few questions come through, but if you have got some more, then please start typing those away and submitting those through, and we'll spend 10 or 15 minutes going through those questions. So the first one that I can see is about who's paying for this? So this is a common question, and asking, you know, about use of council tax, you know, for example. So I think as Anne has just sort of covered towards the end there, these first phases of the project, in terms of establishing the feasibility and starting out with this early community engagement, is being funded by Transport for London. So Transport for London, you know, we work in close partnership with them to enable us to develop these routes. So this work is fully funded by them at this stage. We haven't got the funding in place at the moment to go on to deliver the project, so that would be subject to further discussions with Transport for London, and to some extent will depend on the outcome of this early phase of work. So we want to have a look at what's possible, hear about what views and ideas that you've got, and develop a little our ideas a little bit further, and then continue to have a conversation with Transport for London about further funding. Okay, so I'm just having a look through these. So question here about the A10. So obviously this route, as Anna's shown, crosses the A10, and some questions about how that might be improved, and some comments I think around sort of the wait time and the staggered crossing. So the A10, as you may or may not know, is that is a road that's owned by Transport for London, so it's not a borough road. So we'd have to again work closely with Transport for London around any changes that were made at that crossing, and establishing exactly what they might be. Again, is part of this early work, so we've not got any clear answers on that at the moment. Transport for London are doing quite a lot of work across London, that they own all of the traffic signals across London, to work out ways of how pedestrians and indeed people cycling, you know, can be prioritised across those crossings. So looking at wait times and how long people looking to cross have to wait is one of the things that they're looking at. So that's certainly something that we'd want to include as part of that review. So no definite answers there, but that's part of what this project is about. So I think there's some questions about Ladysmith Road. I'll pass this across to Anna, but I think the question, Anna, is around, you know, what we would be specifically doing on Ladysmith Road. I think the question talks about the fact that Ladysmith Road is already filtered, as we say, it has a barrier on it. But can you talk a little bit more about what we may or may not be doing on Ladysmith Road?
Yeah, the idea to do at Ladysmith Road is to basically, if we can implement a cycle quiet way, is just including some logos and denote the route, so residents and cyclists and whatever they need, they understand where to go. So yeah, so this is I'm reading the question. Yeah, the idea is just inform cyclists where to go, with logos and any type of signs that can explain how to get into the shared footway that is at Tenniswood Road and that crosses the New River Bridge.
Okay, thanks, Anna. So we're not, and I think as the question suggests, what essentially what we do is we look to do an assessment when we're looking at a particular route where we might want to be encouraging people to cycle. We look to do an assessment of the level of the volume of motor traffic and their speeds on that road. So because Ladysmith Road is already, you know, has that closure point on it, you know, it's highly unlikely that we'd need to carry out any specific infrastructure sort of changes to the design. As Anna said, it's more of a wayfinding so that people are clear about what route they take. I think that leads us to a question around, so there's a question here about any shared paths potentially between people walking and cycling. I think they might be potentially. But again, Anna, could I pass that over to you?
Yes, potentially there are 2 shared paths. Well, I would say 3 shared paths. One that goes from Brick Lane to the A10, and the next one will be exiting the Enfield playing fields, that entering the Ladesmith Road, and the end from Ladesmith Road to the New River Bridge at Tenniswood Road. So these 3 areas will be shared paths between pedestrian and cyclists. It's also we can see at the moment that there are already shared paths between the pedestrian and cyclists.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Anna. So questions around Brick Lane being very narrow. Brick Lane is a very narrow lane where 2 cars can only just pass in either directions. So why do you want to introduce a cycle lane within Brick Lane? So I think similar to Ladysmith Road, I don't think we'd be proposing to install segregated cycle lanes along Brick Lane, but it's really looking at how much, what's the speed and volume of the traffic there, and how can we create a safe environment that enables people cycling to safely and comfortably share the road as it is with any particular motor vehicles that might be there. So hopefully that help explains that. There's a question here about greening, Anna, and whether there's opportunities for any greening along the route. Are you able to help with that?
Yes, as I explained in my slides, so as part of the design, we'll explore opportunities to incorporate sustainable drainage, all called SADs, and such as rain garden, and that will provide greening and also trees where possible, mainly along Brick Lane. That's our main objective.
Okay, great. And then if we can come back to you, also some questions about parking and whether there be any impacts on car parking. I think particularly, well, Brick Lane's mentioned, but maybe you can answer that more generally about any impacts. We may not know that at this very early stage, but any potential impacts on car parking.
Yeah. So looking at the route, there may be some minor loss of parking along some sections in Brick Lane, but that's with the objective to improve provisions for pedestrians, including people with mobility issues, such wheelchair and mobility scooters users. So we mean to improve the footway or walking spaces and also improve road safety.
Great, thank you very much. So I think there's some comment about current shared paths, and I think it's more of a comment actually about whether that's actually people cycling along the footway. I think there is some people should be cycling along the footway, but I think there are some shared paths where it is permissible for people to cycle through. So I think that's what we're referring to there. Okay, just having another look through. I can see some more just coming through as we speak. So there's not. I think we've covered a lot of them. So if you do have anything finally that you want to add, then please pass that through. Let me just double check here. Let's see. There's some comments and observations which we will look at. Just looking through, I can't see any further questions. Well, one question about speed, apparently concerns about speeding traffic on Brick Lane. Anna, is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, so during our traffic data, we noticed that there's also some speeding, so we'll be exploring any potential traffic calming measures to reduce the speed and in the area that should be required.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also another one about Enfield playing fields car park and just some concerns over general security and such like in that area. Is there anything you can talk to on that?
So right now we've been consulting to carry a crime safety and risk assessment and also aligning assessment as part of the design to assess any to assess the existing situation, and also being engaging with the police, the Metropolitan Police and LB community safety team to inform any of the proposals and keeping engaged with residents and community around the area.
Okay, great. And one, I think, potentially final question, unless anything else drops through. Yeah, question about sort of further engagement and whether people will be able to comment on any designs. I think some comment that, we're talking about an overall potential route here, but there's no specific detail. And I think, I can add to that yes, what we're doing here is some early engagement to try and identify what people's potential issues are or ideas along this this type of route alignment. That will help us then work something up in more detail, and then there'd be another round of community engagement on that particular detail where people could make specific comments on what we might be proposing. I think that next stage is subject to sort of further funding, and the project page is a key place, I think, to go to receive any updates on this particular project. I'll also add that, as we talked about before, the live map continues to be available on the website, and so I'd encourage people to go there as well and continue to add their thoughts and their comments and their ideas and their issues to that document as well. We'll pull together and collate together the information that we receive from these various sources, and that will help inform the development of the design process. Okay, I can't see that any further questions have come through, so I propose that we end the webinar there. Thank you very much for those that have joined. A copy of this will be published onto the project page so that if anybody else can view this at their leisure. Thank you very much for coming along and for engaging in this stage of the process. And yeah, we will be back in touch when we have more information to share. So thanks very much and good night, and we'll end the webinar there.